Hi, I'm Phil Ball, pastor of Odyssey Christian Church in Jenks, Oklahoma. We're part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and we offer a non-judgmental approach to support your personal journey of faith. After the message, we invite you to keep listening for a presentation from our wonderful band. And if you want to experience worship live, we invite you to find out all the details at www.facebook.com/Odyssey CC. We're in call and mission, and we're talking about scattering seeds, and we began that last week, and that it's just a process, and so I wanted to follow those kingdom of heaven parables, and they're just in a big row in Matthew, and all of a sudden it came to me that we needed to do just these three tonight, and they're real short little ditties, but they all fit together, and they talk about what I consider to be where we are with Odyssey better than any other thing in our whole style, our whole attitude, and so I'm pretty pumped about it, and I hope that it comes across with the kind of helpful feeling that I'm bringing to it. And so let me start off with talking about, as long as we image the kingdom of heaven as a place far away and a time distant from the present, then the parables of the kingdom given by Jesus are really kind of little importance to our present understanding of what it means to live here. But I'm seeing Jesus talk about the kingdom of heaven is very near and at hand and stuff, that it's in the present moment that we get to experience it. And so I feel that many Christian traditions really want to ignore the reality of the kingdom of heaven being in this time and place, because it's so terribly difficult and challenging to do the things that are involved to bring in the kingdom attitudes, which are like compassion and justice and connection and faith and trust and hope and all those things that seem to be abstract. But when you live in those, you experience the kingdom of heaven. And I think that that's really hard. But so when we begin to relate to this kingdom as current and in this time and place, it is really powerful. And it's important to us that the Christian mission then becomes even more valuable. The seeding of the kingdom of heaven, if you would. And it calls both individual personal action, but active collective action as a church and as a people. It's a mission that calls us to relate to our call as serious and relevant to ideas, behavior, purpose. And it's not something as we can, like many Christians, in my experience, do, put our faith into the faith corner and then say, that's church and that's business. I had a neighbor, my first church on my own in Lexington, Oklahoma, and he liked to sneak up. He was an old dude and he was a horse trader. And he made no qualms. And he said, well, that's church and that's business. And he kept them separate so that the church ethics and value systems did not have to inform the rest of his life. And I'm not trying to put that down, but I'm saying I don't think that's what Jesus was about. I think that we open and understand and we try to bring those relevant values to everything. I'm kind of reminded of Christians who fight for the lives of the unborn and then at the same time are in favor of returning all the children fleeing from violence and death in Central America as they cross the border and threaten the United States. It's like children that have a face and a body and a personality are less the ideal romantic illusion as the pure innocence in the womb, because real is where all the challenges are. Real is where Jesus lived and lives now. It's in real. He did not live in a faraway place. Every time I see our current Pope in action, I am almost moved to tears every time, because he is making connections. He is making real in front of people. And I feel like that's exactly what Jesus did. But if you read the Gospels, he's always in the middle of everything going on. Real is where the rubber meets the road. And that's what I'm committed to. I think that's what Odyssey's committed to, bringing Christ's word and emphasis in the real world to a real life. And last week we identified our personal mission fields. Why, look up there. And now there were a few, that I didn't like. Some of you are retired, and I did not put the Odyssey stuff up there to represent me, because I represent all of you who are retired and don't have an image on up there. That you still work your butt off and do lots of stuff. And but that's our mission field. It's not all of us, but my goal is to bring awareness to the reality in our sermon series that we're called to mission wherever we are each day, because that's the mission field that works. That's the place where you can make the biggest difference tomorrow and the next day. And while there are needs across the globe and there are crying needs in difficult places, I'm saying that that's not where we are. That's not where I am, but that's where we are is right here, and we sow the seeds for here. So here is the first of those parables, and it's a parable about the characteristics or the nature of the kingdom and real experience of what it means to be a sower of seeds. And so here it is. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field, but while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then do these weeds come from? And he answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers to collect the weeds first, bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. So we ask you to consider this, that there's no clean or pure or controlled management way to scatter and grow the seeds of the kingdom. It's always all mixed in. And that's something that we need to know about. And it's even true in ourselves. But communities, in my opinion, that attempt to be pure in word and deed are chasing an illusion that builds walls of separation based on illusions of perfection, which finally it's God's responsibility to handle the final judgments. When we sow seeds in our lives, we can only pray over them and do what we think is best. And that is a powerful blessing. We must have time to sleep, and others may choose to sow undesirable seeds in our mission field so that our emphasis and energy is best spent nurturing the growth of the healthy and desirable qualities and attitudes in our lives and the lives of others. And there's nobody who's listening to this who doesn't have weeds in their lives. We all have that, and we're aware of it. And so we understand God already understands all that. God is already hoping that we can nurture and feed the best part of ourselves. God accepts and loves us, knowing that all the mixed up contradictions that lie within each one of us are blessing. And so that to impure powers such as ourselves do their best at sowing what we can, but it's God's job to do the rest. So this is the first of our lessons tonight. And that text guided how we attempted to relate to Odyssey from the beginning of our time. That still holds true. We don't try to qualify people. We don't ask people to, have a rubber stamp on their forehead before they take communion. None of that kind of stuff goes on. It's just an attempt to be inclusive of all folks. And that's just a real celebration that it's God's ability to bless us for who we are. And so he puts to them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field, and it is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Now, to understand this parable, one must first recognize that a mustard plant is an annual herb, okay? Its proverbial, very small seeds can indeed produce a plant that is normally from 2 to 6 feet in height, and in extraordinary cases, 9 to 10 feet, but does not produce a tree of any kind. Now, that's important to get in your head. It's not a tree, it's a bush, okay? Now, this is symbolic. The text is so full of symbolism. And stay with me. The tree motif comes not from the observation of mustard seeds and plants, but reflects the symbol, which is the imperial tree found in the representations of empires like Assyria and Babylon, including apocalyptic imagery of the coming of the kingdom of God. Some of it has this great tree image going on. So that in this parable of Jesus, there's a surprising imagination that he would choose to illustrate the kingdom of heaven with this bush. It's way too common. It's way too ordinary. It's way too accessible that this bush would be the one. I was reading a commentary on this, and I want to say these words to you, but I find them so big and long that they're a little hard to understand. They said they call it the surprising, the imagination stretching, and presupposition questioning tension from the juxtaposition of the imperial tree image common to empires. Okay, so basically, you don't ever say a mustard bush has to do with the kingdom of heaven. You say it's some kind of massive, great tree with great strongness. It's the imperial tree, the lowly mustard seed, and the plant which will become the symbol of the kingdom of heaven. It's my contention to you that Odyssey is the mustard seed. We are small. Okay? One of the issues that God and I have had, I alluded to this last week, is I realized in conversation with a person about 3 weeks ago that I had this phobia that I was not aware of. I don't image myself as having phobias, but I did have a phobia, and I started looking at it and questioning it and figuring out what it was, and I figured out that it has to do with having, at First Christian Church downtown, I watched for 20 years it decline, and people, we just couldn't do anything to turn it around. A lot of people tried, and it was not for lack of trying, and it just kept declining. And when I watch Odyssey over the years, we've got this great core of people, which is you, but we've lost people around the edges. Like, Giselle used to come and bring her kids, and then she wanted to go back to work, and she's a nurse, and she did night nurse things, and she began to burn herself up over that. And then about a month ago, I popped her up on Facebook, and they started going to Harvard Avenue. Well, what a perfect place with all the families that are there, the people her age, and that kind of a stuff. But I've just watched us kind of diminish in some respects. And we are not people who are going to go out and strong-arm 7 other people to come showing up. And that's who we are. That is the nature of what God has created here. And frankly, I think it is fabulous. We live out of grace. We live out of acceptance. We live out of insight and compassion in ways that so many other institutions have yet to achieve. And I'm saying that in those images that Jesus is using as a small thing and saying, that's the kingdom of heaven, my heart went, oh, Odyssey's really right where it's supposed to be. We are the kingdom of heaven in the midst of who we are. As I've watched our average worship attendance decline over the years, that really did bug me. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't be something different than what I was. When we first met Odyssey, I would sit at Starbucks and go, should I talk to that person? Should I talk to that person? Should I talk to that person? And the few people I'd try to talk to, when I got finished talking to them, I went, God, I hate that. It's a private journey. The reason we don't have altar calls is because we build relationships. And if you need to express your commitment to your faith, you will talk to somebody, you will talk to me, you will talk to somebody else and you'll say something about it. And we'll announce it. And then we'll take you to Colorado and go skiing, and we'll take you up at about 10,000, 11,000 feet, and we'll baptize you with snow. Which is what we did with Hallie and Josie. And it's like, what a joy. What a joy to do things that different. And we're not sitting on the corner over here on Sundays so that people don't wander in. And they don't wander in and go, what a nice church. We're weird. We're on Wednesday nights. And only Wednesday nights you have choir practice, right, Jill? I mean, that's when you have choir practice. Everybody knows that. Or some other kind of thing going on. So that God has called us to be different. And the promise that I have to you is that we're in this journey together with God. And we will continue to follow the call to live in this extraordinary life through joyful, loving, accepting, grace-filled commitment relationships in service with Jesus Christ until we decide as a group, well, we're done. And that will be what we need to do. I see this parable one of the most important that I've ever read and studied. Because when I got clear that all of this stuff had to do with the kingdom of heaven and not what we should or shouldn't be doing, it became really powerful. Hang on a minute. In the presence of the hoped-for kingdom of Jesus, his works, his disciples, it is no more obvious to us in a common herb garden, but the kingdom will come in God's power and glory, and nevertheless, our model, our boss, our leader, our inspiration is a king who operates in meekness and rides a donkey instead of a war horse in the most important symbolic parade of his life. Do you see the consistency there? Jesus is going along changing the way people thought of who the Messiah was, changing the way the kingdom of heaven is. And sure, we all like to be part of a large organization. We all like to be part of a really pretty building place. But that model is so powerful. He is represented by a kingdom symbolized by a common garden herb rather than a great tree, by a donkey. In fact, it was a colt. It was even smaller, which means his feet were about 2 inches above the ground while he's moving down the road. And it's like, but that is so not human. That is so not cultural, humanity's values. And thank you, ma'am. Because, one of the things I just had to have in my younger years was a hot rod Camaro. Because it's fun. And there's lots of energy and fire and power and all those things. And that's the human side. Where Jesus is gotten past that through God's grace. And he models that for us. And so God has sown the mustard seed of Odyssey in a field in Oklahoma as a sign of what the kingdom of heaven may be like. We will live and die as those committed to that kingdom. Okay? And I need to say one more piece of that. Last week I had this vision when I was talking to you that we are a core. I've tried to get that. We are the core that enables this word to get way beyond these walls. We are in a different world than we were at First Christian Downtown because we are now able to reach every person on the globe through the internet, and we are a presence on the internet. And there are people who actually listen to what I say on the internet that don't live anywhere around. That's pretty scary. And there's a woman in Alaska who used to be in my youth group in 1971 who follows what we do and sent us tabs. We're still collecting tabs, everybody. My cousin in California always pays attention, and she's gotten relatives there hooked up with the email. And once in a while I look up. As far as I know, I've only put 158 or 159 people total on the email list that goes out on Mondays. And I looked at it the other day and had 163 people it was going to. I don't know who signed up. But you stay present to the whole globe. And it's this core that happens. And it doesn't happen, all that doesn't happen unless we're together. Because the stuff that synergistically goes on between all of us is more than if I just sat at home and I'm going to write something religious. Okay? It's a dynamic that goes on in the core of all of us. And every person in here is critical to that process. And people like Sutters wrote me and says, we are facing a logistic nightmare. There's a 50-50 chance we'll be there. Okay, well, the 50 went the other way. So that's just, that's the way. But I'm saying that's how we're about. That is who we are as a community of faith. And so here's the last image. And this is one I love too. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like the yeast, leaven, that a woman took and mixed. And my commentary wanted to pay special attention to that. That the oldest translations write hid. Okay? Not mixed, but hid in with 3 measures of flour until it was leavened. The original parable of Jesus had 3 surprising features. That's all that parable is. The kingdom of heaven is like a woman that took yeast and stuck it in flour and mixed it up. Or just let it sit there. I'm not sure which. You can see that bubbling. That's the reason I put it there. That's it. So what's going on? What's going on with that? It's a catalyst. That's what leaven does. It transforms plain flour into something that it wasn't before. Where both things get together, they start happening. Well, the original parable had three surprising features. The positive use of yeast. Talk much? The positive use of yeast, which in almost all Jewish writings is the symbol for corruption. Do you remember you have to clean the yeast out of your pan before you have Passover because it has to be unleavened bread? If you don't remember that, I'll tell you. You have to clean that stuff out because it's corruption, okay? Messes with it. The mustard plant is a shocking juxtaposition, and this yeast is also a change that Jesus is doing. Most Christians image the kingdom as totally harmonious, peaceful, in spite of the consistent stories in Scripture of God acting like yeast in the lives of people. Abram, take your wife. I want you to go to a land I will show you, and I will give you thousands of children with your, I think, half-sister. And like an idiot, he does it. And after a while, they don't have kids, and he starts this dialogue, which is what I do with God. Are you with me? Lord, some people keep leaving. You've got to send more people. Oh, it'll be fine. You just keep rolling. That's the dialogue we're having. The dialogue for Abram was, Lord, you promised me to have 80 bazillion kids, descendants. I don't have anything, and when I die, everything I own is going to one of my slaves. What is the deal with that? And God says, look at the stars in the sky. Look at the bliss lights on the ceiling. Okay? That's how your descendants will be. And so there's this constant dialogue where you bring your frustration, and then after all that's gone, and he has the kid, and 13 years later God says, oh, by the way, I want you to take the kid up and offering him as a sacrifice. Now, you don't tell me God's not a catalyst. God's always doing that. And then Jesus picks up on it, and in the New Testament, Jesus goes, you have heard it said, an eye and eye, tooth for tooth. There's a whole bunch of them. There's a big list of those. You have heard it said, but I say unto you, a new paradigm, catalyzing change. And that's what got him killed. You understand that? He changed too many things, and the administration couldn't deal with it. So that the second big thing in the midst of all of that yeast action is the quantity of flour that was leavened is surprising. 3 measures being about 10 gallons, making enough bread to feed 100 to 150 people. It's like ending the parable of the sower with this surprising extravagance. The focus of the parable is thus not on the natural processes of the development of Christianity as it spreads into the world, but on the surprising, miraculous extravagance of the coming kingdom. Now that's what we're praying for around here, is miraculous extravagance of spirit. We already have a bunch of that, you understand? Every time that band plays, everybody goes, what's happening? Okay, it's going on. Okay, the verb used for placing the yeast in a flour is unexpected, hid. One anticipates placed or needed, but there is no action of the woman bringing about the final extravagant supply of bread. The kingdom is at present hidden and silent, working by unexpected and even scandalous means. Welcome to Odyssey. Although the future will reveal its reality, we are the leaven placers. Place a little leaven over here, see what happens. And I need to tell you, personal stories. There have been several people in my life, two of whom I can name instantly anytime, who did major leaven transformations in my heart. One of them was my brother. You've heard me talk about it before, where I was sitting at that drugstore and he says, Phil, what is it about yourself that you don't like? I mean, out of the sky, we were talking about, whatever we were talking about. I worked in the gas station, I was in seminary, and it was like, dude, I was not offended, I was transformed. And the second one was the head chaplain at Emory University Hospital, a guy named Charles Gherkin. And this is all God activity. This is how God works. I had signed up for a counseling course I can't remember what it had to do with, frankly. But I'd signed up for this counseling course. And in seminary, if you did counseling courses, you were on the edge of liberalism, okay? And if you were crazy on the edge of liberalism, you signed up for a whole semester where all you did was be a chaplain somewhere. Well, I didn't think I could stand all that, so I signed up for part-time and different things. And after a class one day, Chuck Gherkin stops me, and he's kind of an older, white-haired dude, and he says, "You keep people pushed away out of self-defense. You have a heart to embrace them." It's always nice when somebody knows me. It's transformational. But one of my biggest frustrations as a pastor is that I have been that way for several people who did not invite it, and they were less pleased than I was. I actually did that to a person who started with Odyssey, and that individual was quite compulsive about some things, and I said, "You really like structure, don't you?" Or something like that. I can't remember what I said. And that was the last day she showed up. Well, that would have been like, "Well, yeah, I do. Is there something wrong with that?" "No, just pointing it out. I'm not trying to criticize you." Yeast is important in the kingdom of heaven in many ways and in many respects. So that we are hidden in Jenks, Oklahoma, in 3 measures of flour capable of feeding 150 people, and we are God's transformational catalyst and called to be faithful while God works in unseen ways in our lives, in our community of faith, and in the larger world around us. We are seed sowers who recognize that sowing is not a managed, orderly business, and we are called to sow seeds anyway. We scatter the seeds of the kingdom with prayer, trusting that God will bring life-abundant change in spite of all the weeds of fear and greed and lust for power that would wound and block that transformational love. We are those who, against all logic and worldly value, plant the smallest of seeds, trusting that God will do with them what is needed in order to provide a home for new life. We are those who sow, plant, and hide the catalytic leaven of transformation and change, leading to new life within the hearts and minds of others, trusting in God's nurturing care for growth. We are sent out as divine seed planters, as those who are not discouraged when what they are given is the smallest of seeds to plant, and those whom the resistance to an opposition know that the catalyst of God's leaven will work uniquely to nurture growth in the kingdom of heaven. What an honor to be blessed with that possibility. Let us pray. Dear God, we come to you as those seed scatterers who like to see something grow. We confess our worldly needs to recognize that something we've done is significant. And yet, finally, we trust you. We pray that in every life in this room, as those individuals live their lives in care, sow seeds in 1,000 different ways and 1,000 different places, that you will be the prayer that moves in behind them to plant new hope, that you will be the catalyst that births abundant and extravagant love in the lives of people. And we give you thanks. Amen.
weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sing.